Welcome to Living the Music. Today we're going to take a look at my musical journey, and it's an interesting exercise. I invite you to do it as well. If you had to come up with 5 artists that somehow represent or symbolize your musical journey up till now, which artists would you pick? So, like, who did you start with? What was your first love in music? And how did that evolve over time? And where are you now? And how have you grown along the way? Something like that. So we're going to get into my journey here, and I'd love to hear your 5 choices in the comments below. All right, so starting off as a young adolescent, like a lot of kids at that time in the 70s, my first band and my first real enthusiastic, passionate love was with Kiss. I'm not ashamed to say it. It was a great introduction. I was around 10 or 11 when I first got into them. My best friend at the time introduced me to them, and it ended up being my first concert when I was 11 years old. I went with my cousin, and it was the Love Gun tour of Kiss in, I think, 77, 78, somewhere there. Cheap Trick opened for them, so that's quite an introduction to rock music, right? Like, can't ask for much better, really. So that was a lot of fun, and it just made me even more enthusiastic about this band. What can you say? The music is fun. I had no idea at the time the sort of sexual innuendos. We laugh about it now. Like they have a song called "Rocket Ride," and my friends and I, we just heard that as, oh yeah, it's just take a ride on a rocket, go up into space. Wow, that sounds like fun. There didn't seem to be any other meaning to it, but we were young and naive, of course. So this band just got me started in music, and because of their whole mythology that they built up, it really lent itself to immersing yourself as a fan. My brother and my cousin and another friend, we had many a fun, clean evening of air guitar concerts playing Kiss Alive and Alive 2, and just wonderful memories. So that's my first love. That's number 1. Now I moved on from them a couple years later, a few years I would say. And my next choice is the great Ronnie Montrose. Now, he's not as heralded as Kiss by any means. In many ways, he's completely forgotten, but not to me. To me, he's a pivotal figure in my musical journey. He fronted a band called Montrose that's somewhat famous in classic rock circles anyway, and especially because Sammy Hagar was his lead singer. Now, Sammy only stayed around for 2 albums, but they're great albums, especially the first one is highly regarded. I'm holding up Ronnie's first solo album because although I love the band Montrose and I love his subsequent band Gamma, I'm really a super fan of the man himself, Ronnie, and his guitar playing. It really stood out to me, and it got me into really looking at music from the sort of the virtuoso aspect of it. Kiss were fine players, but you wouldn't necessarily call any of them virtuosos. Ronnie was one of those guitar heroes, and he loved showing off. He did it on most of his albums. And my brother and I have seen him in concerts so many times over the years. We lived in the Bay Area, and Ronnie was from there, and almost every time we could, we'd go see him from the time of like 16, 17 years old until Ronnie's passing, in unfortunate passing in 2012. So Ronnie Montrose, that's my number 2 pivotal artist in my musical journey. Number 3, well, we have to talk about the great Paul McCartney. Boy, I've gone crazy with my love for this man and his music. He's the artist I collect the most. I love collecting his material, and it's kind of cool because he's put out so much stuff and so many different genres, of course music more than anything, but there's lots of books about him, magazines, he's done painting, he's done classical work, poetry, he's just so much fun to be a fan of, and of course he's so prolific. I got into him when I was around 14 in 1980, and this was the album that first turned me on to him. It's funny, I got this album as a gift for my mother for Mother's Day or her birthday or something like that. If you know this album, it's a little quirky, and she didn't really dig it. I didn't know at the time what it was really like, but since she sort of passed on it, I started listening to it, and I'm like, this is pretty good. I'm digging on this. So that began my fandom, and of course that's a little bit late to the game for Paul, And the thing I admire so much about him, he's just Mr. Music, and he's been going since 1960 at least, and he shows no signs of stopping right now in 2025. So Paul, I think he really symbolizes songwriting and getting into appreciating the craft of the song, some would say he's the greatest songwriter of the age of the 20th century, and maybe one of the greatest, if not the greatest, in rock history, or and maybe up there in music history. So he's led me on the journey of really paying attention to songwriting, and of course that informs my channel to this day. All right, number 4 on my list of iconic, important artists in my musical journey is the great Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren, there he is in his mask. This is his 1985 album, Acapella. There he is, unmasked, so to speak. I'm holding up this album because this is my favorite Todd album, at least currently. So again, I was late to the game on Todd. I never really even heard of him until around 1989, and I happened to catch one of his newer tracks on the radio, and I went out and bought the CD. It was Nearly Human. That was the name of that album, and then I just dug it, and we started going to concerts. My wife and I at the time, we saw Todd many times together. I've subsequently seen him with my son and other friends, and he's just another love of mine in terms of music, and I think Todd really got me into, let's say, the experimental side of music, and this album's as good a example of that as any, because it's called Acapella, and it's entirely just his voice, but it has a twist to it because he uses this early sampler called the emulator, and it kind of gives him the ability to create lots of different sounds using his voice. So this is a all over the place album, but it's actually quite tuneful too. And that was the thing about Todd. He was experimental, but almost all the time he was melodic also. And he's got a wonderful voice. Love his soulful voice. So I've remained a fan of his with great allegiance and enthusiasm ever since. And finally, before I come to my current musical icon and current important artist in my life, I just want to say that obviously I'm not able to list all of the artists that have really shaped me and influenced me. Just to name a couple in passing here, Neil Finn is very close to my top 5. Tori Amos is very close. Peter Gabriel. Linda Ronstadt. Even though she didn't write tunes, I love her singing voice so much, and she's very important to me. Joan Baez. I went through a phase of really digging Joan Baez. Bob Dylan. Rush. That's just to name a few. But coming in at number 5 in most important artists of my musical journey right now in 2025 is Father John Misty. And those of you that follow my channel will notice that I occasionally will do videos on his work. And he's my current favorite, my current obsession, you could say. This is his album, his second album, I Love You, Honey Bear. Many would consider his greatest album, and I would say this is one of the best albums I've heard in a long, long time. It's already in my top 10 albums ever. And the wonderful thing about this is I've come full circle in a sense, in that my son Brett actually introduced me to Father John Misty. I had never heard of him either, but a few years ago, my son played me this album in a long car ride we were having together, and with every track that went by, I just was getting more and more into it, and thought it was more and more special. So that's a wonderful memory for us, and I'm so glad he could influence me like that, because I took great pride in showing him great music also. I guess Father John Misty represents for me just the really going deep with songwriting, like really being introspective. It's introspective in terms of reflecting on his own life and his own experience, but also taking that introspection and putting it on the wider world as well, because he does a lot of commentary songs also. Now he messes around. He has a lot of sarcasm too, so it's not all so intellectual. But he is a very wordy artist. He's got very interesting lyrics that make you think, and also he's a beautiful singer and a beautiful melody writer, let's say. He has the whole package. So even though I've just gotten into him a few years ago, he's right up there with my top 5 artists that have shaped my musical journey, and I'm sure he'll stay with me till the end. And let's see who comes next. The life is still young as far as I'm concerned, and I'm still open to being turned on to new favorites. So there's my list. Love to hear yours. This is a fun exercise to think about your top 5 most influential artists, musical artists, over the course of your life. So let me know in the comments who your top 5 are, or if 5 don't come to mind, give me 1 or 2, and I'd love to hear, and maybe you'll share someone with me that I end up checking out and becomes a favorite of mine. So there you have it. Thanks for being here. Hope you have a great day. Take care.